Welcome to PlanStronger TV. I'm your host, David Holland. It's been said that money can't buy happiness, but that doesn't stop us Americans from trying. How much money is enough? How much do we need for our retirements? Luckily for us, I'm joined on today's program by Dr. Art Markman to help answer these questions and to discuss the psychology of money and the happiness equation. I'll also answer some financial questions you weren't sure how or whom to ask. Let's roll. Welcome back, and I'm very glad to have join us on today's program Dr. Art Markman. He is the Annabelle Iron Worsham Centennial Professor of Psychology and Marketing, University of Texas at Austin. Welcome.
It is good to be here.
Glad you're with us. That's a mouthful.
It is.
But you've earned it. Ph.D. in Psychology, University of Illinois. I almost said University of North Florida. That's where I went. Oh. Okay, so they're very close, University of Illinois and North. Dr. Markman is also the author of the book, Smart Thinking, 3 Essential Keys to Solve Problems, Innovate, and Get Things Done. That's what it's all about. Also, radio program with Dr. Bob Duke, Two Guys on Your Head. Yeah. Okay, and their podcasts are available and also on several radio stations. So I'm glad you're with us. We've got a lot to dig into. Yeah. We need your expertise. You've been at University of Texas at Austin since 1998?
That's right, yeah.
Wow.
19 years.
Wow, that's a good run.
It is. I'm loving it.
All right, excellent. So you get called on a lot for your expertise in this area, especially as it relates to money. Why do you think money is such a topic that people want to talk to you about it?
Yeah. Well, so money pervades so many aspects of our lives. First of all, it's the thing that gives us a lot of our opportunities. Having money gives you opportunities to travel. It gives you opportunities to upgrade the things that you own. It gives you an opportunity to change where you're living. It affects where your kids go to school. So it plays this enormous role. And in addition to that, our society has made money something that's really central to our feelings of status. And so we now believe that some amount of our worth as a member of society is reflected in the money that we've made and the money that we have. And so it has a profound effect on a variety of aspects of our lives.
And it's also, I think, been looked at as a way of measuring, not to be too cute about it, but like money in the bank as a measure of your happiness and a measure of your success. So here's the big question for everybody. Is there a logical way of figuring out how much is enough? You know, how much money is enough?
Yeah. You know, so it's funny. On the one hand, I think for a lot of people, it never feels like enough. You know, we just feel like happiness is going to be around the next corner. You know, the funny thing is that the old saying that life is a journey, you know, the odd thing is it turns out that that's really true. It is the experiences that you have in life that are the things that are sustaining. The stuff you have, generally speaking, doesn't really make you that happy. There's a concept that Danny Kahneman developed that he calls the hedonic treadmill. And Danny Kahneman is a very prominent psychologist who ultimately won the Nobel Prize for a lot of his work. And the hedonic treadmill is this idea that there's something you want, that you really want to get. And so you aspire to it, and while you don't have it, you're not necessarily as happy as you could be, but you think, if I just got that thing, that'd be it, then I'd be happy. Then you get it. And for a week or two, you're pretty happy. I just got this car or this big TV or whatever it is. But after a few weeks, that just becomes your life as it is. That's just
we adjust
the thing
pretty
you
quickly.
Own. Exactly. So you adapt to that, and now there's something else you want. And so the treadmill is now there's this next thing. And if I just got that, it would make me happy. So the stuff you have really isn't the thing that makes you happy. It's the experiences you have, and it's your connection to the people around you. And that means two things. First of all, money makes you happy to the extent that you don't have things you desperately need. I mean, let's get that out of the way first.
Sure.
I mean, if you don't have enough food to eat, if you don't have a place to live, having more money can make your life a lot better in a hurry.
That's really about alleviating pain, though,
That's
as
correct.
opposed to being happy.
That's right. That's right. But it's hard to be happy if you don't have a roof over your head.
Sure.
But then after that, once you've taken care of those needs, creating great experiences for yourself that create good memories, that can make you happy. And then the other thing is using your money in a way that helps you to connect to other people around you. Because we're a social species, one of the things that helps to make us happy is that feeling of connection to others.
Right.
And that's there because we need those connections in order to survive. And the things that make us happy are things that are good for our survival. So using your money in a way that makes you feel connected to others is a way that can actually bring you more joy, more happiness. Buying presents for people.
You beat me to it. I was going to ask about that because for a lot of people, giving money is an incredible source of joy for them. And it's almost like, you know, the same feeling people feel when they are shopping or they're getting something. Giving something makes a person feel that way too.
And it sustains because it solidifies that relationship. And not just giving a present, donating. Right? Giving money to the community and now feeling part of that community also creates that sense of well-being. In fact, if you look at the happiness of people in different countries, there is a sort of moderate positive relationship between the wealth of the people in the nation and their overall happiness, but it's only moderate. And there are lots of countries who are, quote, happier than they ought to be given their overall wealth. And those countries that are happier in that way tend to be countries in which there are very strong social ties between the people.
Gotcha.
Which means that the more that we can take our resources, and our money in particular, and use it to strengthen those social ties, the more that we're doing for ourselves to really be happy.
Well, so it sounds like there is almost like a diminishing return on the amount of money you get or how hard you have to work to get it or the things you have to do to get it in terms of the return, in terms of happiness.
Yeah. Well, partly because many people find themselves in a situation in which the things they have to do to make the money don't make them happy. And so they overwork for the amount of money that they get, and then that amount of money is more than they need to actually be happy. So one of the trade-offs you have to think about is, you know, particularly if you're in the situation in which you don't love the job that you do. I mean, I've always said that the saddest 4 letters in the English language are TGIF. Right? Because if you're just waiting for the weekend to come, then you're not doing something on a daily basis that makes you happy. And now that money that you're making is not going to make up for all of those hours. And if you go beyond the money that you need for those basic needs and your ability to create some social ties, if you continue to work beyond that and you hate your work, now you're spending way too much time earning rather than living.
Maybe that's a sign you need to spend a little time on the couch with a therapist.
Yeah.
I mean, not to be too blunt about it.
Or a little time with your family, or a little time with your friends. Almost anything other than that time doing the thing you don't love.
We've got to keep ourselves in proper context. Things are very relative in this, I know, in this subject. So numbers in context. So when we look at money in different situations, so I'll give you an example and you can kind of explain it to me and to the audience. In business, I'm dealing with money in a certain way, both for my clients and then also the business decisions I make. And quite candidly, that may be tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, those decisions and that arena. And then I go to my personal life, and it's a very different situation. So we get used to a velocity, a speed at which we're travel, or the magnitude of things we're working with. And when you go from one setting to another, how do we make that adjustment? Because it seems like money has different values in different situations.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, when you're dealing with business contexts, then the amounts of money are necessarily going to be larger for a variety of reasons. And you have to be willing to shift gears. You have to be willing to say, look, in my personal life, This is the amount of money that I'm comfortable with, that I need. And so there's two things you have to do. The first is you have to say, there's no jealousy involved here. Just because I'm dealing with larger sums of money when dealing with those things at work doesn't mean that my personal life is only valuable if those same sums of money are involved. And then the other thing that you need to do is to really then use that to help calibrate yourself about the kinds of purchases you're going to make. I mean, each of us would like to be in a situation in which we don't have to spend that much time paying attention to money.
Right, sure.
But the only way to be able to do that is to create habits that allow you to live within your means. Now, if you create habits that are associated with the numbers you see at work, you may end up spending in your personal life in ways that actually take you out of that comfort zone.
It becomes counterproductive.
Exactly, because now you're creating stress that didn't need to be there.
All right, so let's take that now next to areas where numbers are in negotiation.
Right.
So let's say that we are going to compare money in purchasing a car versus purchasing a house, right? We're still dealing with the same dollars, right? There's still a dollar is a dollar, but it doesn't feel like it because we're negotiating. We might spend all day $1,000 on that car versus that same $1,000 difference you're negotiating on a house doesn't seem to be as big of a deal.
Yeah, it's all dependent on where the zeros are, right? So if you think about the car price, you know, that car price, the zeros start either in the thousands or the hundreds, right? And so that becomes the place where you negotiate. So if you're at a car that's $26,500, well, now you're really getting into, you know, I'd like to get $250 off of this or $300 off because the context actually sets what seems relevant. And then when you get into a house, you know, let's say that you're looking at a house that's $375,000. Now you're up in the thousands. Sometimes you'll even say it's $380,000. You're at the 10,000s.
Right.
And now in the negotiation, you're throwing thousands of dollars this way and that. And one of the things that I often want people to do is to actually take a step back and think about what does that number actually mean? So $10,000 doesn't seem like a lot if the price of the home is in the hundreds of thousands, but try and cast that in terms of, I don't know, ovens for a second.
Right.
You know, that $10,000, that could be, I don't know, 60 ovens.
Right.
You know, are you going to just throw away 60 ovens, right? You're not going to do that. So I think it's really important to recognize that you don't just want to throw that money around in a meaningless way just because you're dealing with really big numbers, which happens, of course, because when it becomes a number, it doesn't necessarily feel like the value of that, even though that difference could end up influencing how long you're paying for that house.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when we are in that situation, the other thing that I try to be mindful of, and I know this is something that people think about and maybe need to think even more about, and that is the question of the value of your time. You know, I'm not going to, if I'm going to buy a car, I will just say it plainly. I'm not going to spend all day buying the car because how much value am I putting on my time?
Right.
Okay? Because what am I doing? I'm either giving up work, I'm giving up time from my family, or something else that I would rather be doing.
Right. So, as you know, right, economists have the concept of the opportunity cost.
Right.
And an opportunity cost is the other stuff that you could do with whatever resources you're putting towards a transaction you're making. And the thing about people is we focus on the entire transaction that we're participating in the moment, including the time, without thinking about opportunity costs. So we don't think about what we could have done with the money that we're saving, but we also don't think much about the time. What could we have done with the time that we're currently spending on this? And so I know people who will spend days trying to get another $175 off the price of that car. And I think to myself, I could have done a lot with that time. You know, and it's not even a matter of translating that time into money. I could have been listening to music.
I could
have been at the gym. I could have been. I don't really enjoy hanging out in this car dealership.
Can I give you the $175 so I don't have to be there for 2 days?
Exactly.
I mean, that's flipping it around.
Right. So I think it's important to consider all of the opportunity costs and then ask yourself, is this really how I want to be spending my time? Because I'll tell you what, when you look back on your life, as you get towards the end of it, you're not going to think, gosh, I'm really glad I spent all of those extra hours getting that extra $175
You're probably not going to tell the story. Yeah. You know, you remember that time that I spent 2 days in the car dealer?
That was a high point.
Boy, that was a fun day. Boy, I really liked that. Now, to be fair, some people enjoy the experience.
That's right.
They like the negotiation, they like that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But let's speak to, and I think our viewers will really enjoy this, is speak to the people that are on the other side of that are the sellers of the service or product or who are advertising. How do they view our experience in buying the car or the new washer and dryer or the new bed? How do they view our coming in to enter into that process? How do they view it from their side?
Well, of course, the thing we have to understand is if I'm selling something to you, this is my area of expertise. First of all, I got to be here all day because
come into the web, said the spider.
Right, exactly. Enter my world. And on top of that, I have all of the information. I know how much the car cost me. I know what other incentives I've got for selling this car. I have full information, and you don't. And honestly, there's a lot of decision fatigue that I'm trying to create. So the idea of decision fatigue is the more choices I have to make, the harder it is for me to bring more mental resources to each additional choice.
Wear you down.
Right. So what do? Right? First they get you to test drive the car. So now I'm excited. I want it. That's my car. In fact, you see other people looking at it, you're like, step away from my car. Now, I can even bring other time pressure to bear. You know, 4 other people are looking at that car, so it might not be here tomorrow. And again, anytime somebody puts time pressure on you, walk away. Because you know what? There are other cars pretty much like that one that they can get for you if you need it. Now, on top of that, I'm going to start asking you to make lots of choices, not just one. It's not just the choice of buy this car for this amount of money, but is this the interior you want? Are these the options you want? Why do they create all of these decisions? Because the more that you make, the more I'm wearing you down in terms of your ability to think through the implications of those choices. Plus, it's creating what's called an escalation of commitment. So
you've invested.
Right. I'm investing my time, and I'm beginning to feel more and more like this is mine. And so now I'm going to do more and more to make sure it becomes mine.
And also a feeling of maybe of an obligation to even the other person because they want to be your friend.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. We want to be cooperative, right? And so one of the things that I don't want to do is to fail to reach a deal. There's some really cool research that got done lately showing that people will actually make deals that are not in their best interests just because they want to be agreeable. They want to feel like they were cooperative with you. So it's actually, there's a psychological cost to walking away from a negotiation. And so you have to know that going in. You have to understand that this person sitting across from you, no matter how nice they are, isn't really your friend.
Right.
They're in a business. They're trying to create a business transaction. And at the end of the day, you have to be willing to walk away from that deal if it's one that isn't really the right one for you.
And the same comes back true over on the money part of this,
That's
is
right.
that we have to be willing to stop, and a deal that's so good or some opportunity that's today will be available another opportunity later.
Right. That's right. We have to be willing to take time on these things. So while we don't necessarily want to spend days and days and days negotiating over a car, we have to recognize that we also want to make any decision on our time schedule, not on somebody else's.
And you know what? Maybe spend as much time buying their retirement plan as they do buying their car, because it is funny, some of the things that seem to be the biggest impact, almost people, ironically, spend the less time.
Of course, the funny thing is, when I'm buying a car, I'm excited about that because it's going to be something desirable I'm going to have right now.
Immediate gratification.
Exactly, and it's not just immediate, it's both immediate and gratification. The thing about retirement planning, it's kind of like life insurance.
Right.
There are 2 problems with it. One is it's far away.
Right.
And the other is it requires you to contemplate some things that are not so gratifying.
That's true.
That I'm reaching the end of my life, and as a result, I have to be planning for what I'm going to do when all of these other exciting opportunities are past. Which isn't, of course, to say that there aren't great things that happen in retirement, but when you're younger, you don't necessarily want to be thinking about that. And so trying to keep that retirement at arm's length is actually a self-preservation mechanism.
Well, I'll tell you what, Art, with that input, I'm going to have to work on how do I get you in this financial plan today?
Exactly.
Just like the
right
car.
now. Got to do it now.
All right, great stuff. Dr. Art Markman, thanks for being with us.
Oh, it's so great to be here.
Great insight. Thank you. Okay, it's time for the scoop. These are the financial questions you'd like to ask but haven't. Ready? How can I avoid taking required minimum distributions and/or paying taxes on my IRA? I'd like to have $1 for every time I've heard that question. So let's dig in. First of all, required minimum distributions. Those are the distributions you're required to take from IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, 457, any of those employer-based retirement plans where you've put money in or they've put money in for you and you haven't paid taxes on it yet. You have to start drawing your required distributions when you turn 70 and a half, whether you want to or not, and it's a percentage you're required to take out. It's an IRS rule. All right, so you can't avoid it. That's the first part of the question. The second part is, can you avoid paying taxes when you withdraw from your IRA? That's a little more of an involved answer. The short answer, though, is no. You're going to have to pay tax if the amount you take causes you to have taxable income. In other words, if you have Social Security and maybe a pension or some other form of income, it's very, very likely that whatever you take out of your IRA, you're going to have to pay some taxes on. So there's not really any way to avoid it. Okay? So that's RMDs and IRAs. Next, I want to talk about term insurance and permanent insurance. I get a lot of questions about this. Should I buy term and invest the rest, or do I get permanent life insurance? So the question is, do I go cheap, not pay a lot for the life insurance, and maybe have a period of time where the premium is the same, and then take the extra money that I would have spent by buying a more permanent form of life insurance and use that to do something else? Invest the rest is the concept. So, for example, if it costs $2,000 a year for a permanent life insurance policy, but you could get a term policy for, say, $500, the question is, are you better off buying the permanent policy for $2,000 and know that that's what you'll pay every year, or pay the lower amount of $500 for the term insurance, knowing that the policy will require more premium in the future, and take that extra money that's available and invest it? Well, the question itself, you could hear me describe, the question itself is complicated. So I have to kind of punt on this one and tell you that it depends on your situation. I will say this, if it's a permanent need, my opinion is get a permanent solution. Buy a policy that will give you permanent coverage for a known amount that you can plan on and expect to pay, and not have to be concerned about, well, at some point I'm going to have to pay more. If your need is not permanent, it's for a period of time or a term, then I like term insurance. And obviously you don't have to put as much money out, but you better be sure that your need is temporary for the life insurance, because after the initial, say, 10 or 20-year period, after the initial term, the premiums are going to skyrocket. So for a lot of people, they need to look at whether their need is permanent or temporary. All right, what else? How about the mortgage question? I get this one a lot too. Should I get a mortgage for the tax deduction? I love this question. I have to add a word in. Should I get a mortgage just for the tax deduction? There we go. No. If you want to give me $1, I'll give you back a quarter any day of the week. Because what the question's about is, well, if I have a mortgage on my house, I get a tax deduction for the interest. Yeah, but you're still paying the interest. You pay the whole dollar in interest. It's not a tax credit, it's a tax deduction. Tax credit comes right off your taxes dollar for dollar. a tax deduction as part of the whole formula of calculating what your taxes are. So it doesn't make any sense to me to take out a loan just to get the deduction so you can pay interest. But if you need to hold on to your money, if you need that cash, or you want to put your money to work in another way, then maybe having a mortgage on your home makes sense. If you're kind of evaluating, if you're in that position where you could say, well, I could maybe not have a mortgage, or I could. In other words, if you're in that position, have that kind of flexibility, which is wonderful to even entertain this question, because for a lot of people, there's not a choice. I have to have a mortgage. So you need to think about whether or not it makes sense from another standpoint, not just from a tax deduction. I'm a CPA by training, and I'll tell you that it's very important to have the tax part of a financial decision considered. I use the analogy of the tax considerations can be in the car. I just don't want it to drive the car. And on a related note, is it better to invest or pay off a debt? If you've got an existing debt, are you better off paying that off or investing the money? It depends a lot on the individual situation. Depends on your tax bracket. We just talked about the tax implications. It also depends on what kind of interest rates we're talking about. If you're paying a high rate on the debt, you're probably better off paying it off. So if you think about these things and you consider your specific situation for any questions like this, I think if you do that, you're going to plan stronger.
If you would like more information about the topics and our guests featured in this series, please visit our website at PlanStrongerTV.com. Also, if you have a question you would like David to answer, please send it to questions@PlanStrongerTV.com.